There isn't one American economy anymore. There are two. And if you're watching this right now, I need you to sit with that sentence for a second because it changes everything about how you should be making money decisions in 2026. The top 10% of households in this country are responsible for nearly half of all consumer spending. They're booking vacations, upgrading kitchens, buying second homes. In Scottsdale and Sarasota and the rest of America, the other 90% is quietly cutting back on groceries, skipping doctor visits, and praying the check engine light doesn't come on this month. That's not a recession. That's not a recovery. That's a split, a clean fracture right down the middle of the country. And economists have a name for it now. They call it the K-shaped economy. One line going up, one line going down, and almost nothing in between. I'm Kunal, and on Failed Finance, we don't sugarcoat the numbers because the numbers right now are screaming something most financial news won't say out loud. 34% of American adults, that's roughly 88 million people, describe their own financial situation as struggling or in crisis. Back in 2021, that number was 22%. So in less than 5 years, we've added tens of millions of Americans to the category of people who genuinely cannot keep their head above water. And at the same time, 54% of the country is now living paycheck to paycheck, more than half, including households pulling in six figures, including dual-income families in suburbs you'd assume are doing just fine. And here's the part that should make every single one of us pay attention. 60% of Americans cannot come up with $1,000 for an emergency without putting it on a credit card or borrowing from someone. $1,000. That's a transmission repair. That's an emergency root canal. That's 2 nights in a hospital before insurance even kicks in, and 3 out of every 5 adults in the wealthiest country on Earth don't have it sitting in a savings account. So let me ask you something honestly before we go any further. Drop it in the comments. Where do you actually stand right now? Are you in that 60%? Are you the one quietly carrying the weight of a household that looks fine from the outside but is 2 missed paychecks away from collapse? I want to hear it because I promise you, you're not alone. And the reason I'm pushing this is that the story we keep getting fed on cable news doesn't match the story happening at the kitchen table. They'll show you the S&P hitting fresh highs. They'll show you unemployment at historic lows. They'll show you GDP growing. And all of that is technically true, but it's also technically misleading because when the top 20% of households are sitting on 71% of all the wealth in this country, when the top 1% has watched their net worth balloon by roughly 25% just since 2023, while the middle class scraped together gains of less than 10, the averages start lying to you. The average tells you everyone got a raise, the median tells you most people are treading water, and the reality on the ground tells you a huge chunk of the country is drowning. This is the K-shape, the upper arm of that letter shooting toward the sky, the lower arm sliding straight down, and the space between them is widening faster than at any point in modern American history. Now, Warren Buffett said something years ago that's been rattling around in my head lately. He said, only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. And what we're watching in 2026 is the tide going out on the American middle class. The cheap money era is over. The pandemic stimulus is long gone. The savings cushion people built in 2020 and 2021 has been completely eaten by 3 years of brutal price increases on the basics, eggs, gas, rent, insurance, childcare. Everything that actually matters to a working family has gone up faster than wages. And the people who were already wealthy when this whole thing started, they had assets, they had stocks, they had real estate, they had businesses, and every one of those things appreciated like crazy, so they got richer while you got squeezed. That's not a conspiracy. That's just math. An asset-owning class wins during inflation, and a wage-earning class loses. And right now, America has way more wage earners than asset owners. So the question stops being, why is this happening? And starts becoming, what are you going to do about it? Because here's the brutal truth nobody wants to say on TikTok. The system isn't going to rescue you. The next stimulus check isn't coming. The student loan forgiveness debate is going to drag on for another decade. Social Security is going to be a fight your kids inherit. The only person who is reliably going to look out for your financial future is the person staring back at you in the mirror. And that's not me being harsh. That's me being honest. And honesty is the only thing that's actually useful in a moment like this. So let's talk about what you can actually do starting this week. Not next year, Not when things calm down, this week. Because the K-shape isn't waiting. For you to be ready, the first thing, and I cannot stress this enough, is that you need a real emergency fund, and you need it before you do literally anything else with your money. Not after you pay off the credit card, not after you start investing, not after you contribute to the 401k beyond the match, before all of it. And the reason is simple: without an emergency fund, every surprise turns into debt, and debt at 24% interest is the thing that keeps people stuck for decades. So the target most people throw around is 3 to 6 months of expenses. And I get it. That number sounds impossible when you're already behind. So forget it for a second. Your first goal is $1,000, just $1,000, because that single number puts you ahead of 60% of the country. Overnight. And the way you get there fast isn't by cutting your latte. It's by attacking the big three: housing, transportation, food. Those 3 line items eat 70% of the average American budget, and that's where the real money lives. Refinancing isn't really on the table at current rates, so housing means getting honest about whether your zip code matches your income. Transportation means asking whether you really need 2 cars or whether one of you can switch to a paid-off used vehicle and kill a $400 monthly payment. Food means meal planning on Sunday for 7 days and watching your grocery bill drop by 1/3 without you eating any worse. These aren't sexy tips. I know. You've heard versions of them before. But the reason you've heard them is they work, and most people still don't do them. The next layer is income, because there is a ceiling on how much you can cut. There is no ceiling on how much you can earn, and the American economy in 2026 has more income-generating side opportunities than any economy in human history. You have a smartphone in your pocket that is more powerful than the computers NASA used to land on the moon, and you can use it to make money before. Bed tonight? I'm talking about driving a few hours on weekends. I'm talking about freelance work on platforms where small businesses are desperately looking for someone to handle their social media, their bookkeeping, their email marketing, their customer service. I'm talking about turning a skill you already have, whether that's writing or design or fixing things or teaching kids math, into $200 extra a week, and $200 extra a week is $10,000 a year. And $10,000 a year aggressively invested in a low-cost index fund over 20 years at historical market returns becomes something that genuinely changes your family's trajectory. This is the part where the K-shape becomes a choice, because the people on the upper arm of that K aren't smarter than you. They aren't working harder than you. In many cases, they're working less. What they have is ownership. They own stocks, they own businesses, they own real estate, they own intellectual property, and ownership compounds while wages don't. So the move for anyone in the bottom 90% who wants to climb out is to use your wages, the thing you trade hours for, to buy ownership, the thing that pays you while you sleep. And the simplest version of that for 95% of Americans is automatic contributions to a broad market index fund inside a Roth IRA or a 401k. Set it and forget it, even $50 a week. Because the difference between people who build wealth in this country and people who don't isn't usually how much they make. It's whether they automated the habit before they could talk themselves out of it. Now I want to be careful here and tell you something important. I'm not a licensed financial advisor. Nothing I'm saying on this channel is personalized advice for your specific situation. This is general education from one guy who's spent years studying why the average American household keeps falling further behind for the big decisions about your retirement accounts, or your taxes, or your debt strategy. Talk to a fee-only fiduciary, the kind that charges you a flat fee instead of selling you products. Because in a K-shaped economy, the last thing you can afford is bad advice dressed up as free advice. And that brings me to something I think doesn't get talked about enough, which is the psychological cost of all this, the constant background hum of financial anxiety that millions of Americans are walking around with right now, the way it shows up in your sleep, in your marriage, in how short your fuse is with your kids. Money stress is a health crisis hiding inside an economic story. And if you've been carrying that weight quietly, I want you to know that recognizing it is the first step toward unloading it, because the path out isn't a single dramatic move. It's 100 small decisions made in the right direction over a long enough timeline. And the people who make it out of the bottom arm of this K are the ones who stop waiting for permission and start moving, even slowly, even imperfectly. And if this is hitting home for you, do me a favor and hit subscribe, because in part 2, I'm going to break down the advanced playbook, the specific strategies, the upper 10% use that almost nobody teaches the rest of us, the tax moves, the investment vehicles, the side income models that scale, and the mindset shifts that separate the people climbing the upper arm of the K from the people sliding down the lower one. This isn't theory. This is the actual map, and I don't want you to miss it, Dot. So let's get into the part nobody walks you through in high school, the part that genuinely separates the families riding the top of that K from the ones getting crushed at the bottom. And I want to start with taxes because this is the single most misunderstood lever in American personal finance. The wealthy in this country do not pay a higher percentage of their income in taxes than a nurse pulling $70,000 in Ohio. And that isn't because they're cheating. It's because the tax code in the United States is written to reward ownership and investment, not labor. W-2 income is the most heavily taxed form of money there is. Every dollar gets hit with federal, state, FICA, Medicare, sometimes city tax on top. And you see the damage every 2 weeks when you look at the gap between your gross and your net. But capital gains held longer than a year get taxed at a much lower rate. Qualified dividends get preferential treatment. Real estate gives you depreciation that can wipe out paper income. Retirement accounts let you defer or eliminate tax entirely. And the second you understand that the code rewards behavior, not virtue, you start playing the game differently. The first move for almost anyone watching this is maxing the match on your 401k if your employer offers 50 cents on the dollar up to 6% and you're not taking it. You are literally turning down a 50% guaranteed return. There is no investment on planet Earth that will reliably beat free money from your employer. After that, the Roth IRA is the most powerful wealth-building vehicle ever handed to working-class Americans. $7,000 a year, $8,000 if you're over 50. Growing tax-free for the rest of your life, never taxed again when you pull it out in retirement, and a married couple maxing 2 Roths from age 30 to 65 at historical market returns ends up with a tax-free pile in the low millions. That isn't a fantasy. That's just compound interest doing what it does when you stop interrupting it. The health savings account is the secret weapon almost nobody talks about. If you're on a high-deductible health plan, you can put money in pre-tax, grow it tax-free, and pull it out tax-free for medical expenses, triple tax advantage. The only account in the entire tax code that does that, and most people use it as a glorified checking account for doctor visits when it should be invested in index funds and held for decades. Now let's talk about the income side, because this is where I see middle-class families make the biggest strategic mistake. They spend 20 years chasing 5% raises at a job, while the actual wealth in this country is being built by people who own something. Anything. Doesn't have to be a tech startup. Doesn't have to be a real estate empire. Can be a small Etsy shop generating $2,000 a month. Can be a freelance bookkeeping practice serving 10 local businesses. Can be a YouTube channel about a hobby you've been obsessed with for 10 years. The point isn't the vehicle. The point is the ownership, because ownership has a ceiling that's roughly infinite, while wages have a ceiling that's roughly your boss's mood. And the American economy in 2026 has lowered the barrier to ownership more than at any point in history. You can start a legitimate LLC online in 20 minutes for less than $200. You can accept payment from anywhere in the world from your phone. You can market to a global audience for free. None of that existed for our parents' generation, and yet most people scroll past that opportunity every single day because the upfront work feels harder than the slow grind of waiting for a promotion. That may never come. I met a woman last year. Let's call her Diane. She's 53, lives outside Cleveland, worked as a dental hygienist for 26 years, never made more than $68,000 a year. Classic middle-class American story. And 3 years ago, she started recording short videos teaching other dental hygienists how to negotiate higher pay and find better practices to work for. That's it. That was the whole business. She now makes more from that side project than she ever made cleaning teeth. And the reason isn't that she's some kind of genius. The reason is she finally crossed from being a wage earner to being an owner. The asset she built, an audience that trusts her, pays her whether she shows up that day or not, that's the shift. And the K-shaped economy is brutal on wage, earners, and incredibly generous to owners. even small ones. So the question I want you to sit with tonight is, what skill, what experience, what specific knowledge do you have that someone else would pay you for outside of your day job? And don't tell me you don't have one. Every single person watching this has spent years becoming good at something. The trick is recognizing that the thing you take for granted is often the exact thing somebody 3 steps behind you would pay to learn. Drop it in the comments. What's the one skill you have that you've never tried to monetize? I'm genuinely curious, and reading those comments is one of my favorite parts of doing this. The next piece of the playbook is the asset allocation question, because once you have income coming in and you've squeezed the budget, the next thing that determines whether you climb the K or slide down, it is where you park the money. And the data here is honestly boring, which is why nobody wants to hear it. Low-cost, broad market index funds held for decades, with consistent automatic contributions, beat almost every active strategy almost every time. Warren Buffett himself, the greatest investor of the last century, has said publicly that when he dies, the instructions for his wife's inheritance are 10% short-term government bonds and 90% in a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. The most successful investor in modern history is telling you the answer is the boring answer. And yet a huge chunk of the financial industry exists to convince you the answer is complicated, that you need their actively managed fund with the 1.5% expense ratio, that you need to time the market, that you need crypto and options and leverage. And the data over 50 years says no, you don't. You need 3 things: time in the market, low fees, and the emotional discipline to not sell when everybody else is panicking. That third one is where most people lose. Every single bear market in American history has felt like the end of the world while you were inside it, and every single one of them has been a buying opportunity in hindsight. The people on the upper arm of the K are the ones who kept buying in March of 2009, kept buying in March of 2020, kept buying in October of 2022, and the people on the lower arm are the ones who sold at the bottom and swore off the market forever. Real estate is the other piece, and want to be careful here because real estate in 2026 is not the same opportunity it was 10 years ago. Prices in most major American metros are stretched, mortgage rates are still uncomfortable, and the math on rental properties only works in specific markets. But if you can buy a primary residence in a stable area, lock in a fixed rate, and stay long enough for the loan to amortize, you build forced equity month after month, whether the market cooperates or not, and a paid-off house in your 60s is one of the most underrated retirement assets in American life. Debt is the mirror image of investing. Every dollar of high-interest credit card debt you carry is the opposite of compound interest working for you. It's compound interest working against you, and there is no investment strategy that beats paying off a 26% APR balance. None. So if you're sitting on credit card debt and trying to invest at the same time, kill the debt first. The math is brutal and unambiguous. The avalanche method, highest interest rate first, saves you the most money. The snowball method, smallest balance first, gives you the most psychological wins. And honestly, I don't care which one you pick because the best method is the one you'll actually finish. And finally, the part that almost never makes it into a finance video, the relational and mental piece. Because I've watched people execute the playbook perfectly and still end up miserable because they treated money like the destination instead of the tool. Money is fuel. It buys you time. It buys you options. It buys you the ability to walk away from a bad job or a bad situation. It buys you the freedom to be there for your kids in ways your parents maybe couldn't be there for you. It does not buy you a personality. It does not buy you peace. And chasing it past the point where it serves your actual life is how people end up rich and hollow at 60. So set your number, the number that gives your family genuine security. Work toward it relentlessly, but don't forget what the money is supposed to be for. And one last thing before I let you go. None of what I've shared in either part of this video is personalized financial advice. I'm just one guy who's watched this K-shaped form in real time and refuses to stay quiet about it. Your situation is yours. Talk to a fiduciary, talk to a tax professional, talk to people who know your specific numbers. But please don't wait for permission to start. The gap between the two Americas is widening every single quarter, and the only side of that K you have any control over is the one your own decisions put you on. If this helped you, if it gave you even one idea you can act on this week, hit subscribe so the next one finds you, and tell me down in the comments what's the one move you're committing to making. In the next 7 days, I read those. I respond when I can. And there's something powerful about saying it out loud in writing. It makes it real. It makes it harder to back out of. And that's how the climb actually starts. One honest commitment at a time. This is Kunal. This is Failed Finance, and I'll see you in the next one.